I'm delighted to be recording this virtual business card here today. These virtual business cards are part of a partnership between PCD Club and STAK to showcase members of each community and share the latest trends from the private wealth sector. I'm delighted to be speaking today with Garry Bell, who's a partner at PKF BBA here in Jersey. Welcome, Garry.
Thank you, David.
So before we get into our discussion today about the latest trends in tax from Jersey, it'd be great to hear a little bit more about your background and the firm here in Jersey that you represent.
Thank you. I'll talk firstly about the firm. The firm is a 30-year chartered accountancy firm. We have 6 partners in the island and we have 35 staff. Me personally, I joined the firm 2 years ago. My background is Big Four. I'm a chartered accountant, chartered tax advisor. I specialise in dealing with UK tax and Jersey tax for high net worth individuals and their structures.
And Garry, what kind of intermediaries do you tend to work with? I imagine a broad range of private wealth advisors.
It's a very broad spectrum. A large part of my practice is dealing with high net worth individuals who've left the UK and other jurisdictions. Inevitably, there's a UK connection. I tend to deal with lawyers, UK lawyers, offshore lawyers. I do a lot with non-UK EU lawyers, private bankers, estate agents, basically trustees, of course, anybody who touches the sort of high net worth space as an advisor or a provider, I do tend to deal with those individuals.
Terrific. And just looking at the trends in residency in Jersey, as an advisor very close to this subject, it would be interesting to hear your insight on the latest trends.
It's been an interesting 5 years, and I'm looking at this as a 5-year view because we've had lockdown during that period. I was re-establishing my practice during lockdown. I thought we were going to be quite quiet during lockdown. It was actually exactly the opposite, and we were quite busy. You can divide the people moving to the island probably into 3 or 4 categories. You've got individuals who are about to have an event. So they're about to sell a business, for example. You have individuals who are retiring and maybe they're thinking about changing their domicile for inheritance tax and they want to maximise what they pass to their children. You also have high earners, so people like hedge fund managers, investment managers, so earning huge amounts during their career who look at the island. We see between probably 15 to 20 families move over a year. We generally see 1 to 2 families move back every year or so. Okay, It does depend. The island doesn't work for everybody. And I'm a big believer that tax shouldn't be ruining people's lives. It should be the lifestyle, and you make the tax work in the background.
Is there any trends on nationalities or geographies of people coming in? Is it largely British, or do you have non-doms, broader range of nationalities? What do you find?
Historically, I would have said that it's always been people with a UK connection, whether they're coming from, say, Hong Kong and re-domiciling back. We had a few people doing that as the Hong Kong situation evolved. We have taken a few non-doms. When the rules changed in 2017 and tightened up on the domicile rules in the UK, we've had people who have been close to doing their 15 years leave the UK and move to the island as a sort of non-dom reset, if that makes sense.
And just coming on to residential property, people looking to purchase a property here, how do they find the availability of housing and what they can do with it as they're trying to buy their dream home on the island?
Sometimes it can take a few months for them to find their property. We say to people it can be better to rent for a couple of years, get to know the island, get to know which parts of the island they want to live on, but also if they're actually on the island, if an opportunity becomes available, they're there and able to act very quickly. It's a lot harder to do that when you're not based on the island and you're just trying to do it maybe on weekend visits, etc.
I understand there's a process for becoming resident in Jersey. Perhaps you could walk us through it.
Okay. There's 2 routes in that people follow. One is what's called the high value residency route, and the other is the essentially employed route. Okay. On the high value residency route, there are beneficial rates of tax for individuals. So first 725,000 of income is taxed at 20% and the balance at 1%. Under the essentially employed route, which is where you're bringing a business to the island, the tax rate is always 20% on income. What I should say is that we don't have any capital gains tax, we have no inheritance tax, we have no gift taxes, and we have no wealth taxes. The application process for each category is slightly different. Okay. If we talk about the high net worth route, first of all, I'm not going to go into the minutiae of what's required, but think of it as we want to understand, or the authorities want to understand, where the wealth has come from, how the individuals generated their wealth, how they're going to continue to generate income or gains. It's very much, if you think about it as opening up a bank account with a premium institution, that's very much the sort of due diligence that we do. Okay, they just want to understand, and that means that, for example, when people move to the island, they know that people in this category have gone through this level of due diligence. You're not living next door to an arms dealer or a drug dealer. The provenance of where the wealth has come from has been checked by the authorities in quite a lot of detail. Okay, we try to make it as easy for the clients as possible. Typical turnaround times from maybe starting to talk to me to having the application in their hands can be about 6 weeks. Okay, and it can run quite neatly alongside a property purchase, okay, in terms of doing searches, etc. In terms of the business route, very similar idea, but different emphasis. You're very much looking at the business. And that brings me on to another area. It's very easy for individuals to bring employees over, so key employees. If we have, for example, a hedge fund manager or an investment manager, and they have key staff and they want to set up a management operation in the island, firstly, there's no prohibition, unlike some jurisdictions, in actually working. It's also easier to bring senior staff as long as we can demonstrate a business need for that. And that means the operations can continue in Jersey without having to have, say, the principal in Jersey and then having to have an operation elsewhere.
And setting up a company, employing staff, getting first-rate office space, that's all freely available here.
All freely available, and the space in town. The rental yields are anywhere from £42 a square foot down to £20, which, when you think about London rates, that's very reasonable. Plus a sea view potentially.
And you would help them with all the local payroll and
Absolutely. Despite the fact that I'm badged as a tax accountant, we seemingly get involved in everything from nannies through to buildings, through to staff, through to housing applications. And the reason we do the housing applications and the business applications is we're very much sanitising them from a tax perspective to make sure that actually everything that we say is consistent with the advice coming out of the other jurisdiction.
Okay, interesting. And those who do decide to come and live here, I mean, how do they purchase residential property?
It's a small island. It's a beautiful island. I would say that because I'm living here and I'm a long-term resident. You're able to rent on the initiative, on the high value initiative. You can rent and then purchase property. I think in a small island there's always demand for good properties. We've seen the market increase in value. We've seen the prices increase. There's still plenty of real estate available. As I say, you tend to find that in Jersey the churn on property is longer. Okay, so whereas maybe in London historically you've had an 8-year churn, in Jersey I believe it's a 14-year churn. Okay, people tend to move, find a property. They don't tend to move very quickly after that.
And develop those properties out, I'd imagine.
Absolutely, yeah. And it seems to be a trend. I think in the time I've been doing this work, and I've dealt with a number of people and families that have moved to the island, I think virtually most of them have actually redeveloped the property. Even if the property has been, what in my eyes as a simple accountant looks absolutely perfect, I think they've wanted to come in, put their stamp on the property and develop that, and that's always entertaining.
Right, and for families moving also, schools I guess are a consideration. Is there good availability of schools for those with children still in education?
Yes, I mean, you tend to find that people move either when the children are 14, or they're moving into secondary school, or before that, or perhaps after they've left school and they're at university. People tend to use either the local schools, some good fee-paying local schools. There's also the ability to send their children to private school in the UK, and that's a popular option as well. Tends to be more in the southwest, southeast, where they can easily fly in and fly out for ex-jet weekends, etc. But that's a trend. But I haven't lost anybody who's looked at the island as a result of not being able to find adequate schooling. Okay, and there's always a conversation to be had.
Okay, interesting. And what kind of tax planning ideas might you discuss with the different types of clients you work with?
Well, we usually start on this with residency. Okay, and I do spend a good part of my life advising on UK tax residency, either solely or in conjunction with the UK advisors. A lot of the time here, it's got to be a team effort. Okay, and for example, if a UK advisor comes to me and he's giving the lead or she's giving the lead advice on residency, I will just chip in as I'm asked to. But it has to be a team effort. I have the benefit, I think, of having seen a number of different situations. So you're always starting with what do we need to do from a residency side of things. We also position the applications in Jersey around making sure that nothing we say causes a problem and actually hopefully enhances the situation from either a residency perspective or a domicile perspective. Okay, so we make sure that we're talking about the permanency of the move. We never say things like, Mr. X and Mrs. X are moving to the island simply for tax reasons, etc. And we're very careful about that because it is standard procedure on a residency inquiry for HMRC to ask to see the Jersey submissions. Okay. It's largely driven by home jurisdiction concerns, and inevitably because most of the clients come from the UK. It could be something along the lines of making sure that they're positioned correctly in terms of when the sale happens. And again, that's more going to be led from the UK advisor's perspective. It could be ensuring that, for example, they're selling shares out of a holding company and obtaining substantial shareholdings relief. Again, we look at that from the UK perspective. In Jersey, for example, in that situation where you have a holding company that sold the underlying trading company shares, on the distribution of the capital proceeds, that dividend is outside the scope of Jersey tax. Okay, so we can be very, very flexible, but like I say, it's mainly driven by the home jurisdictions. We don't generally do a lot of tax planning in Jersey for the individuals, for the simple reason that in the high value regime, you're paying tax at the rate of 20% on the first 725,000 of income and 1% on the balance. And you have a minimum tax liability currently of £145,000 a year. I've yet to find anybody who really wants to save 1% tax and are willing to pay my fees. I'm always interested in the conversation, but to be honest, you're much more concerned about making sure they've broken their residency and you're not disturbing anything from the UK perspective.
For older clients who are retiring, what are some of the key agenda items you discuss with them?
It's making sure that they're creating Jersey as a real home and that they're here in Jersey with the intention of being here for the rest of their lives. So you're then working with them to make sure that they've maybe disposed of their UK properties, everything in their lifestyle actually points to, and that we're able to evidence it as well. Because one part of this is actually taking the advice, the other part of it is actually being able to prove, if you are subsequently challenged on a domicile inquiry, that the individual was here and that the individual did live here. On domicile inquiries, you have, and this sounds very callous, the revenue have the advantage of that actually the principal person is no longer with us. That's why they're having the inquiry. So you need to make sure you work with the individuals to make sure that actually everything's documented, it's properly done, it's not just done, inverted commas, for tax reasons, it actually reflects their lifestyle.
And in the course of that, do you find that they get involved with local charities, causes, kind of there's external benefits really to their involvement in the community?
Absolutely, and sometimes with high net worth individuals, it's very hard to draw out of them actually what charitable work they're doing. They're naturally quite reticent to share that. So you're trying to point out to them that there is a benefit for them and their family going forward in actually sharing that information with us. We're also starting to do, as we're doing today, we're starting to do video testimonies with people. So we've actually got contemporaneous evidence to show what people's intention was at the time and where they were living and how they were living. So.
Do you think the pandemic has changed the type of people moving to Jersey? Has working from a home liberated people's ideas on what's possible?
I think the pandemic has provided people with the opportunity to see whether they can actually work remotely. That was the big trend. I've talked to a number of people who've looked at the island who wouldn't previously have considered the island because they thought they needed to be in the office, they needed to be there with their staff. The pandemic effectively gave them 2 years working from home where they had to learn to work remotely. We've had the technology for a number of years. We used to set the challenge to people pre-pandemic was to actually sit at home for a month and see if they could run the business from home for a month. Because actually, if you can't run your business or you're not comfortable running your business, there was absolutely no point in coming to Jersey. The pandemic forced people to think, can I do this from home? And how do I do this from home? And do I really need to be there all of the time? So we've seen people that wouldn't previously have considered moving because their perception was they couldn't leave their UK businesses or other businesses. Okay. So it's been a great enabler for the island in that sense.
And just looking at some of the structuring trends from Jersey, is Jersey still favoured by foreign investors buying assets in the UK? What's the latest there?
We're still seeing a lot of new structures come through on property investment. As you alluded to, it's a combination of assets being very keenly priced because maybe people are looking at those commercial assets, commercial real estate assets, and thinking, well, actually, can I get them at a discount? That could be a combination of market and exchange rates. But we are seeing the island still being used for that. And that's the bread and butter of the island, that those structures, in a well-regulated jurisdiction, and good administered structures.
There's been a huge growth in the funds industry in Jersey. Have you seen that factoring through to the private client business, particularly through the Jersey Private Fund?
The Jersey private funds, when you drill back, it's just a co-investment vehicle, and it's an enabler to enable people just to get together and invest jointly. And that, because of the light regulatory regime in that area, we've seen a number of those structures being created locally, and it crosses over between the sort of traditional funds sector and the high-end private client world. But no, they have been very, very popular.
What's your perspective on Jersey on the global stage? What does it do really well in terms of wealth structuring and residency?
I mean, as an island, we made a decision a long time ago that we wanted to sit in that top tier of financial centres. We wanted to be well regulated. We wanted to control the business that came through. That necessarily means that we're not necessarily always going to be at the forefront of the exciting or the sexy tax planning, but we want to make sure that we know where the money's coming from and how the money's being used. That level of regulation I think has served the island very well in the last 10 years. I think a number of other jurisdictions have been playing catch up in that time. The trick is to ensure that we stay relevant to clients and that we continue that, to be well regulated, and that's a real selling point. Effectively, we're looking after people's money, and you need to make sure that the people who are looking after your money are regulated, and there's a level of accountability for that.
Do you think trends around economic substance play to Jersey's strengths because of the people and infrastructure that's available on the island?
I mean, just going back to the level of regulation. I mean, I'm a gnarly old tax man. Okay, I spend my life in tax. There was nothing fundamentally new in economic substance that came through, actually. And the clients that were having the problems actually already had a problem. How can I put it? When we talk about transfer pricing from other jurisdictions, when we talk about management and control, these are all concepts which fit very well into the economic substance agenda. There were probably some clients that maybe hadn't taken advice in home jurisdictions, and then maybe they're the ones that suffered on economic substance. I'm not aware of a vast flight of clients from the island, because since 1999, we've needed to know and actually demonstrate to the regulator why strictures are here, what they're doing, and actually they're well controlled from a regulatory perspective. These are all, so economic substance sits very well alongside the regulatory regime that the island's been implementing.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Garry, you're participating in some white-collar boxing here in Jersey in a few weeks' time. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, I obviously have a face for boxing, and being a chartered accountant, I really should be doing golf in my 50s. It's an opportunity to do something for charity. It may sound a little bit trite and a little bit marketing-led, but I do enjoy pushing myself. And despite my obviously well-honed physique, I do actually enjoy training. So this is a great opportunity to do something for charity. And there seems to be a long list of people that want to line up and see me hit. So always an entertaining evening.
Terrific. Well, look, Garry, terrific to talk to you today. We really look forward to sharing this interview.
Thank you, David.